Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for May 28th, 2024. We're going to look at the question today, how far will the psychopaths go in their attempt to defend their collapsing order? What are the war hawks planning, and what will they do next? There are two developments that we've been following very closely which highlight the extent to which they've lost touch with reality. And it defines the danger that we face if the transatlantic war hawks are not confined to mental health institutions where they can get the treatment that they need. Now, let's take a look at these two incidents and see what we can learn from them. First was the attack within days of the International Court of Justice demanding that Israel stop the aggressive offensive in Rafah, that the IDF launched an airstrike that hit a refugee camp in Rafah, killing more than 45 people and wounding dozens more. Most of the victims are women and children. The IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, acknowledged the strike, but they said they were targeting Hamas, and they were targeting two Hamas people they thought were in the area. Netanyahu was forced to come out and make a statement. He said it was a, quote, tragic mishap, but then he said they will continue the offensive. In other words, it doesn't matter that we killed a lot of civilians, we're continuing to go ahead and killing more. Now, the problem is there's no safe haven for the people who are forced into Rafah. They're in many cases living in tents in the open. And there were more than 1 million refugees, maybe 1.2 million refugees that were forced into Rafah, told to be there for safekeeping. And now at least 800,000 of them have been displaced and have been forced to leave. The reality is that the Western policy is to give Israel the ability to continue this ethnic cleansing policy. Biden and Blinken, for example, keep talking about how sad it is to see the humanitarian effects of this attack, but they don't stop it. You know, they withheld some bombs for a couple of days, and this led to an outcry from Republicans in the Congress that was unbelievable. Their bloodlust caused them to insist that Biden was now going into a pro-terrorist mode. So this is the one aspect of the reality, the continued commitment from the Western war hawks to carry out ethnic cleansing, to support the ethnic cleansing by Israel of Palestinians, to clear them all out of Palestine. Now, the second issue is the Ukrainian drone strike on the Armavira early warning radar site in eastern Russia. In western Russia. And the Schiller Institute declared a red alert over this. The obvious point is that when you start targeting these kinds of early warning sites that are set up to detect incoming attacks, what you're doing is sending a message that there may be an incoming attack following. And we were lucky that this didn't trigger a nuclear response by Russia, and it still might. The Russian Senator Rogozin said that Ukraine may have fired the drone, but Washington was the author of this. Now, as this becomes an increasing danger, we hear more and more the Western leaders saying that Ukraine should hit inside Russian territory. On Friday, Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO General Secretary, in an interview with The Economist, called on the United States to lift the restrictions on the use of U.S. weapons by Ukraine to hit sites inside Russia. Now, this is, again, extremely dangerous And Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, said that Stoltenberg's statements reflect a sense of desperation. Now, as the West is continuing an offensive and refusing to negotiate, and also refusing to accept the fact that Ukraine cannot win this war, the New York Times just ran an article saying Western intelligence agencies have accused Russia of conducting sabotage operations inside Europe. Sounds a little bit like Russiagate, doesn't it? Intelligence sources have discovered that Russia is trying to overturn the US election. Well, now these stories of sabotage include targeting a paint factory in Poland and an IKEA store in Lithuania. Is it true that the Russians are trying to sabotage Westerners putting together equipment and housing facilities by hitting IKEA? That's a Russian war strategy. Now, with this kind of insanity, many are asking the obvious question: how do we fight this national security state blob that we have in the West? They have resources, the military industrial financial complex, or the Mickey Mat. They have resources, including money to buy politicians. For example, the AIPAC billionaires who are pro-Israel, pro-Zionist. They have control of the media, so they can lie and they can censor, which they do. They control think tanks that can put out the fake reports. They control universities. And we see now their complete panic when students go on a revolt against American universities being integrated into the security state, with their endowments going toward the war against the Palestinians in Gaza. So how do you fight this? It seems overwhelming. Well, the first thing to realize is that they are desperate. The reason they're escalating the war is because they're losing the public relations fight internationally. The global South, the former colonies of the corporate cartels of the West, are rising up against them. The move against the weaponization of the dollar means that they're looking for an alternative financial capability to invest in physical economy for the benefit of their sovereign people and their sovereign nations, rather than being slaves providing cheap raw materials to the cartel's financial machine. So we're seeing a rebellion, and it's a big rebellion. And that's why they're so desperate to go to war. Now, here are some of the things you can do. First, follow the Diane Sare for U.S. Senate campaign and Jose Vega for Congress. These are independent campaigns that are activating people to go out and organize. And the most important thing is we have to challenge the puppets of the military-industrial financial complex, not just the presidential candidates, but all of the candidates. Where do they stand on this question of genocide in Gaza? Where do they stand on the attempts to provoke the Russians into a possible nuclear war? And you can use the example, and I'm linking for you the press release issued by Diane Sare for Memorial Day, where she discusses why it's necessary now that we challenge and defeat this collapsing empire. Secondly, get the intelligence that you need. You can't get it from the mainstream media. But we put out a daily online executive intelligence review alert news service, which will give you a strategic overview, bring in economy, history, culture, science. This is the method of Lyndon LaRouche. You have to have a picture from the top, as opposed to looking for the little identity pieces that will appeal to your audience. No, get people to think big. Think about the whole world. Think about the last centuries, last 5 centuries, in which an empire has dominated the planet. And instead, how do we build a Republican constituency? And by Republican, I mean with a small r constituency, to take back sovereignty over Western governments. Now, I'm also linking a recent article by me as an example of this kind of intelligence, because it will give you a picture of the history of Zionism and why it is not anti-Semitic to oppose the Israeli policy at present. Now, what Helga Zepp-LaRouche has been emphasizing is we're in a transitional phase in world history, out from under the era of empires to an era in which sovereign nation states can engage in bilateral and multilateral agreements without going through the City of London, Wall Street, and the international financial institutions that they control. It's the end of the empire. It's a move to a new order of cooperation for mutual benefit. And to participate in this, we need more citizens to make a cognitive leap to this, to looking at the big picture and orienting everyone you talk to toward that big picture, as opposed to just complaining about how terrible things are. Of course they're terrible. They're terrible because they're terrible people, greedy, evil people who have the control. Well, let's take the control away from them. That requires the kind of cognitive leap that you can get, not just from reading our intelligence, but from collecting it with us, organizing people to think on a higher level. So let me leave it at that. I'll see you again tomorrow. Take advantage of the links that I've included in the description box of today's update.